Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Voices in Action, a podcast brought to you by EOCIL. And today, I'll be your host, Almader Perez. And with me, I have Issak Garcia, another member of the harm reduction team. Our last episode, we got the pleasure to speak with Cynthia Weatherspoon. And today, it's Issak Garcia's turn to take the chair. Issak, if you want to give a quick little introduction on who you are and what you do, that'd be great.
Yeah, so my name is Issak Garcia, and I work with EOCIL in the HIV program. I'm 18 years old and I just graduated high school, so everything's kind of, being an adult and stuff like that.
Yeah. I remember that. I'm not that old. I'm only 23, so I've only been out of high school for what, 4 years now. But yeah, I know that was pretty big step leaving there. Well, today I just kind of wanted to talk about and make this episode more on kind of like how your experience through high school was in learning safe sex practices, learning about STIs and all the all the information around that category, just because I know that when I was in high school, at least, I wasn't offered a sex ed class. It was kind of optional. No one really knew about it. I knew maybe a handful of people that actually attended that class, and it was just because there was two students in that class. It was an easy A. They didn't really talk about anything important. So that's what I kind of want to talk about today, is kind of get the insight from someone who just graduated, because I know it could change throughout the years, and especially with like COVID hitting these past couple of years, the way the school system works has changed a lot. So I just kind of wanted to get your input on, what did you see in high school, like throughout your 4 years? Was there a sex ed class offered? Like, did you know about the different types of STIs or STDs that were going around? Like, what was your experience throughout high school?
Yeah, so we didn't really also have a sex ed class, and just like how you were saying, it was like a class that people took usually during freshman year. That was an easy A, whatever, pushed to the side. It wasn't really like a sex ed class, it was like a health physical class, so kind of like gym, I would say. When the teacher wasn't, you know, trained to be a sex ed teacher, we only talked about sex probably once out of the whole class. And it was kind of sad because, especially people my age, a lot of people don't know what, STIs are, or the different, STIs and stuff like that. My school didn't really offer, condoms, or nowhere that they can go to. So they just had to kind of guess, kind of how I had to.
Yeah.
So they didn't give us like things like condoms, because I feel like it's really taboo in most schools to talk about sex. And it's really sad because why wouldn't we want to educate our, you know, upcoming adults in
Right.
sexual health? Like I do remember we did have some outbreaks of chlamydia, I believe, in our school. So that just goes to show you, why this is very important, and why schools should take this more seriously in hiring, a person who is trained to teach sexual education.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you kind of like touched on it right there, is they're like the actual teachers themselves aren't doing that and giving the students the actual education. Because when I first learned about sexual education was probably sixth grade, I believe. And it was literally just a week long where we just talked about the basics, the birds and the bees, and that was it. We didn't learn about, STIs, STDs. We didn't learn about, making sure to wear protection or different forms of sexual intercourse. It was just super basic, and that's the only time I touched on it. Even in high school, growing up, throughout the 4 years, I didn't take a single sex ed course. I wasn't aware of anywhere that gave out condoms or lube or any prevention items. And I knew there was a sex ed teacher, but like you said, people only took it because it was an easy A. They didn't really learn anything from it. And in my case, where I grew up, it was a small town, and there was chlamydia that was being passed around. That was a known fact, just because, you know kids are going to be kids, I guess. And I'm still a kid, and saying that feels weird, but yeah, people are going to do what they're going to do. And especially if they're not educated, they're just going to do whatever they want and not be aware of of kind of like the effects or the harm that can come from it, especially because if you go untreated for so long and you end up getting HIV, that can later turn into AIDS, which is a more serious problem later down the road. So what was something you kind of wish you saw during that time period?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, I do really wish we did have a sexual education teacher because, like how I was saying, I learned all my stuff from either my friends or, looking things up, so like that's kind of wasn't a really good resource for me. And I think a lot of kids at my school also had that kind of resource with just asking their friends who probably, the information could be wrong or right. But if we really had a good system that kids can feel comfortable and be able to take the class, the sexual education class, I think it should have been required for everyone, and not just diagrams or like looking at things, like actually having a class where students can be open about their sex questions. And yeah.
Yeah, I know, because I asked my brother, because he's only 2 years younger than me. I asked him if he learned anything or if anything like changed. He said no, not really. And he took all the health courses because that's his profession, or that's what he wants to get into, is nursing and stuff like that. So he's really interested in all that, the medical stuff, and learning different things around that category. So he took all like the sex ed courses. He joined all the clubs that were around nursing and medical field because that's what he wants to do. And not once did he mention to me when I spoke to him about it, of having an actual sex ed class where he learned about STIs, on how they're transmitted, or how they affect different people in different ways, and the impact that can have, especially if people are having sex with multiple partners and spreading that could be a real problem, just because we're trying to keep those numbers lower. Were you able, like, if you went to the office there at the school, would you be able to ask them for condoms, and would they be able to like give you some, or was that ever provided in any way, shape, or form?
No, so sadly at my school there was no condoms, no one you can really go and ask. Like even if you went to go ask, because we didn't call it a sex ed class, we called it a health class, and it was more physical health and stuff like that. So even if you went to go ask the health teacher or the office, they would just look at you and be like, no, like why would we have that? So it was really sad, because a lot of kids in my school, they were probably having unprotected sex, and that's probably why we had some outbreaks, because they don't know any better.
Yeah.
If they don't know any better, like if they're not taught, then they're not gonna know any better.
Hmm. And before like you went into high school, did you know anything about, like, did you ever have that conversation with your parents? Or because I know for me, it's it's coming from like a Hispanic household, it's kind of taboo to talk about sex with your parents. It's something you don't talk about. You're already supposed to kind of know the ins and out, like, especially in Hispanic households, you're not supposed to be sleeping around with multiple partners. And a majority of them are religious in the form of Catholicism. So you're supposed to only have one partner until marriage and stuff like that. So speaking about sex or sexual education or learning any information on like STIs, STDs was really taboo, especially in like in a Hispanic household. So I didn't learn any of that. That was the only ways I learned about all this information, was just word of mouth, through like friends and family, like cousins and stuff like that. Because I would never talk about this with my parents because it was just so taboo.
Right.
But my friends would say stuff, and I'll see stuff on the internet, and that's how I learned a majority of like the things I knew. And of course, a lot of it was misinformation, so I didn't really get the full understanding because I'm just hearing what someone else said, and I wasn't doing my own research. So did you kind of go through the same experience? Did you actually have that talk with your parents? Did they tell you about having protected sex, about STIs, about prevention, about if this happens, if you do get an STI, what do you do? What are your next steps?
Right. So during middle school, sixth to eighth grade, I was really scared to ask my parents about anything that was sexual because, like you're saying, I didn't want them, to get mad
Yeah.
at me or anything. But during high school, I did start to ask some questions. My parents always said, if you're gonna, then use protection because there is infections out there and HIV and stuff like that. Like it's very scary. And even to this day, it really does scare me. But yeah, I always felt really comfortable with coming to my family about any questions that I had because my family is really open. So we can literally talk about anything and it doesn't make any of us uncomfortable. So that's a great relationship that I have with my parents. I learned a lot actually during like middle school from my cousin because he was having a lot of intercourse and stuff like that. So I would come to him for like most of the questions like, oh, what happens, so things like that. And some of the stuff like now that I look back on it was like, wow, like how did I believe that. So definitely a lot of misinformation from like my cousins and stuff. So again, like having a good resource of sexual education is really important to me because you want to get other people the right information so they don't go around and spreading this misinformation that most of us have probably have gotten.
Totally get that. And that's one of the things that we do here, because you're part of the harm reduction team. And
Yeah.
what we do here is we provide like prevention kits. So in these prevention kits, we have condoms, lube, and we have an abundance amount of condoms. So if anyone were to come in and want a handful, they can absolutely grab a handful. So we have all those resources. I'm not sure, were you brought on to EOCIO as a harm reduction or harm reduction member when you were in high school, or?
Yeah, so in high school, I actually was brought on with Cassandra Toombs's team, which was the COVID-19 team. And I would do things such as like grocery shopping for those who had COVID. We would give rental assistance, utilities. I would do a lot of outreach with trying to get people vaccinated. That's basically what I did in the beginning of working here at EOCIO.
Okay. I was just wondering just because, like, I don't know if you kind of like were able to like let people know that there are like facilities and offices like ours that provide all these safety tools, and it's made really accessible to them. I know whenever we go out to like an event, we always bring bags full of them just because you never know, people might want some. Or
Right,
also fighting like, I don't know, for me personally, I always found it embarrassing when I need to go grab condoms. Like I remember the first time I went to the store and bought some of my own, like I was so embarrassed. There wasn't like a self-checkout service. I actually had to interact with someone. I
right,
was so embarrassed. I couldn't like contain my, I was like, I don't know if I should do this. Maybe I should just call out, maybe blah blah blah. I can go without a condom. And
right,
it was just so nerve-wracking. And especially since we have an abundance, like sometimes people are embarrassed to come in and grab at least one. But there
right,
are some people that feel comfortable enough to come in and just grab a handful, which we want everyone to do, is like come in and grab whatever you need whenever you need it, because we always have it on hand.
right. Like I can see that because, personally me, I'm not embarrassed because, you know, who doesn't want to be safe? So I wish like people would just know that, it's not embarrassing to be safe. Would you rather be safe than sorry?
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the main thing, like that I wish people would kind of get over that stigma or kind of taboo, oh, I'm using a condom or whatever it may be, like it shouldn't be embarrassing, to be safe.
Yeah.
I wish people would, kind of feel more comfortable, but I get that different people have different things.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I got out of that bubble when I first started working here, just because still I never talked to it with anyone. And then it became my job to talk about it. It became kind of a requirement. I needed to tell people about like, hey, have safe sex. Hey, we have condoms, we have lube, like we have all these marketing materials, all these brochures that help raise awareness, especially for like our HIV aspect of it, just because here in Eastern Oregon, it's a lot more rural country. So
Right.
people don't have access to information, don't have access to this knowledge on, how is it actually transmitted, or how to prevent it from spreading. Because when I was in high school, I thought that STIs were spread just by having intercourse with a lot of people, like protected or unprotected. That was the way I thought. I thought if you had sex with X amount of people and you kept doing it, you were going to get something. That's how you get either chlamydia, gonorrhea, or whatever it is, HIV. So having that information handy, and I don't know, it's hard, especially here, because a lot more people kind of are more stuck together, a little bit more conservative, so they don't want to talk about safe sex. They don't want to talk about HIV. I know we've had our struggles, especially doing like outreach for HIV. We go into some department, ask if we can leave brochures here and there about HIV, and they kind of just look at us like, no, like we don't want nothing to do with HIV. And that just stands with like the stigma around HIV as well.
Mm.
Not knowing, like, did you know anything about HIV, or what were kind of like your ideas around STIs when you were in high school?
Yeah, so I kind of had some of the same thoughts as you. I thought, people only get STIs if they're sleeping around, not using a condom, but it only takes, one
Yeah.
person to get that. So definitely, yeah, I did think like that a lot, until I worked here and then I started to learn more. I'm like, oh, okay, you know. With HIV, I knew about it, but I didn't know how it was spread. I didn't know there was something called PrEP and PEP, until I started working here at EOCIL. I do have a lot of friends that are also LGBTQ plus, and they also didn't know about PEP or PrEP. So that just goes to show you again, why we need some more education in sex ed, especially in schools.
Mhm.
You know,
And do you feel like knowing about that in high school would be beneficial? Like, in the sense, I know it's beneficial, but like, would you be able to like fully, like, if you were back in high school and someone talked to you about PEP and PrEP, would you be able to like fully understand what the significance of that is? Or do you think that we need to have it broken down a little bit simpler, a little bit more basic? That way, people can start getting the idea. Or should we just give it to them right away? Be like, hey, this is PrEP. This is what it does. This is what it is. This is what it's for. Or do you think we need to break down, like, just have safe sex, don't wear condom? There's stuff like HIV out there that can lead to life-changing circumstances. Or how do you feel like that should kind of have been addressed earlier in
um,
your education?
yeah, like I think it does need to be broken down because even today, there is some gray areas because there's so much to learn about it. So I think if it was for sure broken down, where students can easily understand what it is, um, stuff like that. I do think how you were saying there is a lot of stigma around HIV, and it is kind of sad. But, like if we don't talk about it and we just keep it, you know, from everyone's minds or whatever, like how are we going to, stop the spread of HIV? Like that's what I kind of don't get around here is everyone's so kind of stigmatized around it, like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, I just want to push it off to the side. Like we need to address this problem, so we can get it taken care of, so we can stop the spread of HIV. So
Right,
that's not how I see it.
right. Yeah, no, totally. And that's our main goal is with our outreach program. And we also run a needle exchange program, which also kind of helps prevent HIV, especially if you're sharing dirty needles and stuff like that. But just having this information be broken down at a younger age would be great. Because I know even my little sister, which I was completely baffled, but she's like quite a bit younger than me, almost by 10 years. But she kind of already knows some stuff about the whole sexual education topic, which I was blown away because I was like, "You're my little sister." Like, no, please don't learn about this. But she learned it on her own just because she's a lot younger, so the younger generation is always online on the internet. So she's seen some things on through there, and she was able to get educated herself, and she knows a lot more than I knew already. And that was just through her own doing. That was through her learning how to do that herself by finding that information herself. I'm not saying we should, you know, have kids do it on their own, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there and a lot of wrong
Right.
information that we don't want them to know because it only does harm to them. But having that system available to them where they can learn about all this information would be amazing.
Yeah, like I definitely agree. I feel like that it could be like a touchy sensitive topic for people because a lot of people don't want to teach their kids about sexual education. And I kind of agree. Like, I think we should have, like, once they get into high school, it should be required. But come to think about today's day and age, most kids have cell phones. So they are pretty much probably exposed to it already. I feel like, especially around here, like a lot of people, you know, they don't want to talk about sex. It's taboo. They don't want to teach their kids, especially I see like in the news all the time, um, like, oh, you're exposing our kids to all these sexual things. But in today's day and age, like I just said, they're probably already exposed to it. Like their friends are either talking about it or they see it, for themselves. So that's what I think about.
Yeah, especially because we want to help reduce the numbers. We want to educate people. So, what would you think would be like a good idea for us to do? Just like here at EOCL, I know we already do a lot, but you know, being that you were just out of high school and now that you're working under the, the harm reduction umbrella, is there something that we could do here to help, raise awareness in the school system, in high school, or maybe even not high school, or at least in the college level, like drop by some universities here in Oregon? Is there anything that you think that would benefit people?
Yeah, I think if we did some condom distribution, like around to, high schools or colleges or stuff like that. I also think it'd be really good if we had a kind of a group or essentially like making people feel comfortable if they have any questions about safe sex, that they can come here to EOCIL. So kind of more advertising that more so people know. So I think that's something we can do here. And like I was saying, the group too, I think, having a little group every once in a while and, educating students on sexual education and then give it on like, condoms, lube, whatever it may be.
Mhm. Yeah, and it'd be so beneficial if we can get out there and actually, because a lot of people probably won't come up to us and ask just
Right,
because I know I wouldn't. Like if I saw someone in my high school post it up, but there's always that chance that you just need one person. As long as one
right,
person, then it makes it all worthwhile, because then that's at least one possible person that you help prevent either contract or spread HIV. So being able to go out there onto like a campus and just setting up like a quick little booth with information on there, with tools or toolkits available, would be like really great. And I know even having like a dispensary, I've seen some bathrooms out here in Oregon. I haven't seen a single one in Idaho, and that's where I'm from. But in Oregon, I've seen some bathrooms that have an actual like dispenser. So like a condom dispenser in there. So being able to just go in there real quick, you pay what, $1.25, get a condom, and then you're done. That way, for those people who may feel embarrassed when they have to go out and buy some, that kind of eliminates that problem,
right.
right?
Some Another thing that would be kind of beneficial that EOCIL can do is maybe like a online support thing. So, if an individual wanted to text or whatever call, they can be connected with an employee here at EOCIL because I feel like that can be very beneficial too because I would much rather text or call, especially with all these our generation, everyone's social media online. So I think something to do with online can be also
Online
beneficial.
communication.
Mhm.
So
I
having
think,
kind of like
yeah,
a server where you can just text a quick message and get a reply from either yourself or Cynthia or me.
right. Yeah. I think that could be,
And I think it's kind of fun how we're talking about like what EOCI can do, as if we don't already have these ideas. But
Mhm.
I've always liked the idea of just spitballing and throwing ideas out there, just because that's how we get things going in action. Once we find something that works or have an idea and we want to try it out, then it's just wheels off the ground there and we're just flying. So
Right.
that'd be great. And I know there's a lot that we're still trying to do here. There's a lot of work to be done, especially because we have seen that HIV is jumping up a little bit. We have had some new cases develop, and letting people know where they can go, because I didn't know anywhere to go. Like if I ended up, say, I found out through a friend, or a girl I was with had chlamydia, like I wouldn't have known where to go. I didn't know. I definitely wouldn't have told my parents back in the day in high school. If that happened to me, I would have been like, nope, I'm just gonna, it's to myself. I'm not gonna tell anyone, blah, blah, because I didn't know what to even do at that point. Like, I don't know exactly how it's transferred, how I got it. I wouldn't have known where to go from there if I was put in that situation. Like, would you have, do you know kind of where you would have gone when you were in high school if
Yeah.
if that would have happened?
Same. Yeah. No, I would be, freaking out, crying if I found out that I had something. But I feel like if someone gets it, like people are like, oh, she's nasty, or oh, he's nasty, and I feel like it's okay. Like, I feel like a lot of people need to be like more accepting to it because I don't know, like it's my rational fear to get anything. But, if you were to go to a doctor's office or something, they would be like, it's fine, like this happens. So I feel like it shouldn't be a fear. And I don't think there's any places around here that I would have been like, oh, I can go get tested here, or, so there's no really places that I knew in high school. No
Mhm.
resources were posted in my high school. I didn't know any resources. Um, but yeah, I don't think I would know anywhere to go, and that's really sad because that's how the virus or STI gets transmitted still, because no one knows if they're clean, no one has been tested.
Right. And
So
was did you, because you just hit the key word I was looking for there, is testing. Is Did you, like, and if you don't want to answer, by all means don't. I don't want to pressure you. But like, did you ever go in to get like tested regularly, just like a normal checkup, just make sure? Or did you, like, you hear your friends ever talk about it, or do you know of people that were in high school that went in and got tested regularly, or was testing also kind of like no one did it because why am I gonna test?
right,
So
like a
what
lot
was
of
kind of the situation around that?
yeah, I think a lot of people, especially I used to think this too. Oh, okay, I'm having safe sex or whatever it may be. Like, oh, I don't sleep around with a lot of people, you know, or oh, my partner, they're cute or they're pretty, so they can't have anything. And like I don't know why I thought like that, because like I said, it takes one to get something. So I have tested, yes, and I think I've actually tested here at EOCIL, and I think it's very important for people to get tested because you want to know your status, or if you have anything, so you can get it taken care of. We don't want to wait for the virus or STI or whatever it may be to progress to make you even more sick, or you know what it may be. I feel like a lot of people are nervous to get tested, and that was me too. But after you get tested, you feel way more better about yourself. So like, okay, negative, whatever it may be. So, and I also think having a really good support person, to either go with you, because Kelly Rumsey was my support person to get tested because I was very scared. And, when then you have to wait for the results. So that can be also very nerve wracking.
Yeah, and how was that entire process? Like when you decided to get tested, was it like really drawn out? Was it super long, confusing? Like, did you know what you were essentially like signing up for? Because I know sometimes you can go into a doctor's office and they just hand you forms and forms, and you you're just kind of like signing away. You don't really understand what they're gonna do. They just kind of have it there in like really hard words. Like, was it easy? Like, did you know what you were signing up for basically? Like when you went in there, like you knew exactly what you're going to be tested for. It was super simple. The doctor was able to answer all your questions, or did you feel like somewhere along that process that you ran into like barriers?
Yeah. So at least for me, I have family that works there. So it wasn't really too hard, but there was, a lot of application filling out. I feel like the doctors here were really, do you have any questions? We're here to answer and provide you with answers, which was really nice and it made me feel a lot more comfortable. When I got tested here, same thing. I had Kelly Rumsey and he was very, like, oh, do you have any questions? Walking me through the process and, telling me, oh, it's going to be fine, like, you know, just wait. And yeah, I just felt really more comfortable and safer with especially someone who makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And I know if as long as like even if you don't have family members, just bring a really close friend or
Hmm.
something, because that can always ease the tension and
Right.
have that support thereby. And for anyone that's listening, we have four offices: the Dalles, Burns, Pendleton, and here in Ontario where we're located at. So if you live like in a different town or something, and you kind of get that sense of like, oh, I don't want people to see me going here, or what if like someone notices me at this hospital that I know, you can always travel to one of our locations. And I know for the most part we have an HIV test kit that you can take home with you, or we can help direct you, be like, hey, you can go to the health department. You can also get tested there for anything. If you have an urgent care around you, I know testing is free for any STI. There is always, I know some pharmacies, not all pharmacies, have some sort of take home test kits um, for STIs. You just have to check on that one yourself to see if your local pharmacy has that. But just know that you can go in anywhere and it's always going to be confidential. Like they don't share your information with anyone, and it should be super quick and simple. You should never feel like discouraged to go out and get tested, because it's a normal thing, and you just want to make sure that you're being safe, that if in the event that you do have an STI, that you're not spreading it onto someone else, or things of that nature. So there are a lot of resources out there that you can go, and even just searching up local STI test centers or HIV test centers, you're bound to find something. And especially I know it's a little bit harder here in rural Oregon, just because if you live in a small town, kind of in the middle of the state, and it's kind of takes a while to get in and out. It's better to take that trip to get tested to make sure that you're safe. That way it doesn't progress and get worse later down the road, right? So that's what we have to offer here at EOCIL is we have HIV test kits, which you can come in and grab. You're going to either talk to myself or Isaac here in Ontario office, or if you're near the Pendleton area, you're going to be talking to good Cynthia Weatherspoon. And then we'll go from there. You'll just sign in a quick application. We'll give you your test kit, and you can either take it here with us if you feel comfortable enough, or you can just always take it home and do it there yourselves. But know that regardless of the test results, you are going to have people here to support you. And I know that's probably like the hardest thing is some people might feel excluded, especially if they feel like if someone were to find out that they had an STI or STD, that, oh, everyone's going to shun them, everyone's gonna pick on them. Because I know in high school, I hate to say this, but I used to be that person, or I used to be that person and be in that group of, we found out someone had an STI like chlamydia, we just always pick on them and say terrible things to them. And now I'm ashamed of that, but it's someone that I was, and someone that I was back in the day. So I'm happy to say that I'm not that person now, because I understand more. I was able to educate myself more. I was able to understand that, hey, if you get chlamydia or gonorrhea, you can go into the hospital, you can get medication, you can help clear yourself of that, and then move forward and live a good, healthy life again. But having like that fear of people knowing and then being excluded and being made fun of, being bullied, is pretty harsh, and that's coming from someone who did that to people. So, and I know it's kind of kind of hard for maybe some people to hear that, especially because I work here, and you would think that, oh, I would never do that, but that was the person I was, and like the growth that I've gone through, just learning and educating myself, I was able to rethink everything. So, and did you see a lot of that? Like when you were in high school, did you see people getting picked on for, various reasons?
Yeah, definitely, like you were saying, there was those groups who would pick on someone because there was someone that did have chlamydia. So yeah, it was really sad to see because that's private information that can be really sensitive to some people. But that's why I love EOCIL is because we keep everything confidential and stuff like that. So it's really a safe space here. But yeah, in high school, there was always that going around, so much bullying and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, it was kind of really sad to see that because, you know, it is a normal part of human life. You get those STIs or whatever it may be because, we're just human. So yeah, I definitely seen a lot of that in high school. Um, I wasn't the one to do that because I was very shy. And so, I was just kind of in the background, kind of watching, and it's kind of
Yeah.
sad because I should have, said something, but, it just continued to happen. And unfortunately, that girl, she dropped out of school probably because of that.
The real harm that comes from it is you don't know how someone's going to receive that. On one hand, some people might just brush it off, say whatever. Other people might take it a totally different route. So, and that's just going to discourage anyone from wanting to go in and get tested, because the whole idea is like, if I don't get tested, then how do I know I have it? So, like, you only have it once you get tested and you have it. So when you see that going around in school and you see people getting picked on, then it's like, why would I want to go in and get tested? Why do I want to risk that? What if they find out I have it? What if they find out that I got
Right.
tested?
Yeah.
So yeah, and definitely being a voice for them, like an advocate, because I've been a bystander plenty of times too, and it's not always the best feeling to know that you can just like step in real quick, because then you're also putting yourself out there
Right.
and kind of exposing yourself to people that would then ridicule you for defending someone who has an STI or is going through something. So that's like the key point that I've learned here too, is that everyone is so accepting. Everyone here is so open about who they are, about what they do, and it's just like a really nice community to be a part of. And that's like one of the things I'm so happy about, like finding this job and applying and getting in, working with everyone here, is like no matter what problems I have, there's always someone I can go to. There's always someone I can talk to about it. If I have any questions about a particular subject, I know I can confine in X, Y, and Z, and I know that they have their best interest for me. And likewise, like, so anyone that comes in here, we only have their best interests, because
Right.
all of us, or a majority of us, have all gone through like something. So especially like our CEO Kurt Toombs, he's hard of hearing, so he can relate to a lot of people who come in and are hard of hearing. We have that connection because we have someone that goes through that problem.
Right.
um, and then we have a lot of people who have disabilities that we can relate to them as well. So literally having that support group is so beneficial in so many ways. And then just having that in high school would be so beneficial and help out, and just talking about it in general, right?
Right. Yeah, because I feel like even if we can't get a course or teacher in high school, like even students, if I wasn't so shy in high school, I think it'd be good for someone to have like a club or, like just how I was saying, like I think EOCIL should have like, a little group, so people can have at least a group if they can't get it in their schools to
Yeah.
come be educated, because I know that our school board was really like they don't pass anything like that. Because I think Kurt, he tried to get something over there, but they just were really hesitant on their no answer. So
Yeah, it's a little bit trickier to get that and like get into the school system. So the other thing I was gonna say is like kind of feeling pressured into this idea that because before it used to be, or not before, but it was like a lot less talked about. It's like you only had one partner, you only slept with one person, and that, like nowadays people are having multiple partners, and then people get pressured, especially like in high school. It wasn't that severe in the high school that I went to, but I know in the like surrounding high schools, like if you hadn't had sex already by your sophomore year, like what are you doing?
right,
While like people are pressured into having sex or like thinking that they need to have it, which is just not the case. Also, because that could be so demoralizing for people, especially like if they come from like a religious background or if that's just something that they don't want to partake in, and then they feel pressured that, oh, I have to, or else I'm not going to get accepted, or you
right,
know, my friends aren't going to think I'm cool anymore if I don't have sex with X amount of people or stuff like that. And it wasn't that big of a problem in my high school. I know there were some people that, there's always going to be that one person that says, oh, blah, 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 blah. I've slept with so many people. But I know in the high school surrounding my area, that was like a big thing because it was a small town and there were small towns all around. So everyone would get together just because that's what you do when you live in like rural places is you try to meet as many people as you can because there's not a lot, right?
right.
So like being just knowing that just being aware that you don't have to, even if everyone else is out having sex and doing all these activities, that doesn't mean that you have to or that you're required to fit in or to be a part of a community or of any sort. Like, did you experience any of that as a
Yeah, so I sadly experienced that with my friends. Um, it was my senior year, and they're like, pressuring me like, "Oh, you're still a virgin," stuff like that. And it was kind of like really pressuring, but especially with me because I always try to please people. I'm always trying to be like, oh, fit in, stuff like that. And it shouldn't have to be that way. But I think if people really, stand for their morals and kind of take a step back and look at, oh, is this who I am? Like, do I really want to do this because someone else wants me to do this? Is that what you want? So I think, yeah, I like definitely taking a step back and, sticking up for kind of yourself and being like, these are my morals. I don't need to have sex, to fit in. Like, I will have, sex when I want to. And I feel like a lot of, especially in high school, like those people who did sleep around with a lot of people, for me, I think a lot of people were like, oh, like she's dirty or oh, he's dirty because, he sleeps around with everyone. I kind of, well, at least with me, I'm really comfortable, talking about sex or anything like that. I think we don't need to like, stigma, like kind of put a label on those people, like, oh, they're dirty. Because
yeah.
some people, like, nothing is wrong with that, in my opinion. Like, if you're getting tested regularly and if you're, being safe, then, do what you need to do.
Mhm.
Because I kind of feel like in high school, there was always that kind of nitpicking towards certain girls and guys, like, oh, she sleeps with a lot of people, or oh, he sleeps with a lot of people, so they're dirty or, they have STIs or whatever. And it was just kind of really sad to see that because, sex is a normal thing. And
Yeah.
some people, you know, have different sexual things.
Yeah. And just because it's a normal thing, you don't have to have sex.
Right.
So don't ever feel pressured. And then even that goes along with that is using a condom. Whether or not you decide to use it is up to you, but don't ever feel pressured, especially, there'd be some situations where maybe the guy doesn't want to use the condom or the girl doesn't like the way the condom feels or something like that. Like if your partner doesn't want to use it and you do, don't give into that. Like that's also consent goes both ways. If the guy wants to use a condom and the girl doesn't like the way it feels or for whatever reason she doesn't want to use it and you don't feel comfortable, don't give into that. That's a whole nother thing that you're getting into is also learning the boundaries on what you will and will not put up with. And because I know in high school, the whole talk was, oh, it's so much better without a condom. it was so much better. So why would you ever use a condom? Blah blah blah. So people didn't really want to buy condoms. No one bought condoms. They all thought it was like it's pointless. Do what all the people are doing and just pull out. You know that term that they use. So even having like that baseline of, hey, I want to use a condom, but you don't give into that peer pressure as well. You have consent goes both ways. And then if that doesn't work out, there's always other options that you can look into, like birth controls or enemies, or there's female condoms as well. But there's just different ways to go about it. And I know that was one of the things that primarily sticks out to me when I think about like kind of sex education in high school and kind of what I knew and didn't know. So everything I learned from either friends or like my cousins that I was like really close with. And even that they were like, oh no, condoms, they're pointless. Don't use them. It doesn't feel good anyways. So that was what I got out of it. But luckily for my parents, they've always said, always, always, always use protection. So I was able to get that information. So for anyone listening and you kind of feel like you want to please your partner or whatever it may be, you don't have to, because then you go down a road that, you know, a lot of people don't return from, in a sense, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah, like especially that, like that's a great point that you bring up because, like I've gone through that, like, someone wanting not to use a condom and like, stick up for yourself, don't be scared or shy or try to like, please someone like you said, because at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your choice. Even talking to your partner too, you know, is really good. And like you're saying, like with your friends or whatever, or people in school, like that's just another thing that just tells you like why we need sexual education because condoms do provide something.
mhm.
We've been talking a lot about like STIs and HIV, but also about pregnancy too.
The pregnancy thing is a big portion, and what can you kind of like reiterate what you were saying about that?
Yeah, so I think that's why we need a sexual education classes because we've been talking a lot about STIs and HIV and all these other transmitted infections, but we don't. That's why we need to educate students more on pregnancies as well too, because I do know some people who did have a pregnancy with this guy because he didn't want to use a condom, and then the girl was pregnant,
Mhm.
and like what she didn't know what to do. So it's just kind of really sad to see that too, because she's not educated. He's not educated, so educating our younger, you know, kids and people is really important to, education is key.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't recall, at least in my high school, I don't remember. I think there might have been like two team pregnancies, but other than that, there was also like no information about that. Like what happens, what happens if you get pregnant? Like what is that going to look like for you and your partner? And that also goes with like if you don't have a condom and you are wanting to, have sexual intercourse with your partner, and then you just say, oh, whatever, what's this one time without one? Like it only takes one time. That's the key
Exactly.
for it to all happen. So, and especially when you got places like ours where you can literally come in and grab a handful, even if you're not going to use all of them, as long as you have them at hand. So just in case anything happens, or whatever the situation might be, it's always there and made available to you. Just because you don't want to be there and then not have a condom in hand, just say, oh, okay, whatever, let's just do it this one time. Next time we'll make sure to use a condom, because it only takes that one time to
Right.
either spread an STI or STD, to contract HIV, or to have like an unplanned pregnancy. So it's
Right.
definitely important, and that kind of goes with just making sure that there's some form of education in high school, because that's where it primarily is, because that's when everyone's hormones start kicking in, when puberty starts to kind of like really flourish, so everyone's kind of going through the motions and the feeling. So, and not having that made readily available to him during that time period is so crucial,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Well, I think it's been a pleasure talking with you, and you know kind of wrapping up everything we talked about today. is we kind of went over what Isaac's experience was in high school. You know, we kind of both had similar experiences where we didn't really have a sexual ed class. There was a class that was offered that mentioned it. It was an easy A. No one really partook in it. It was just there. We also talked about, you know, the misinformation and the harm that that can do, especially for young people who kind of don't have anywhere else to look other than like the friends who find stuff on the internet and that stuff is false. You know, so it's always good to re-educate yourself, go online, do research, or go into like a health department, a pharmacy, go into an urgent care center, facilities like EOCIO that provide this information and knowledge and the safety tools. You know, we also spoke about what we kind of want to see and what we think would kind of be beneficial in the future in helping spread awareness and helping prevent this sort of uh was it closed-minded group, so to say,
Mhm.
where we don't talk about sex. It's just it is what it is. You know, move on from it.
Right.
They'll find out on their own. Like that's not really a good solution, just because there's so much misinformation. And then,
Mhm.
you know, the key term that we've been saying this entire podcast is it takes one time, and that's all it is, right?
Right.
Is there anything that you'd like to bring up, Isaac, just before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to say, get tested. Don't be scared to get tested. Don't be scared to talk to your partner, about getting tested or if they've been tested. And, just don't be so taboo about talking about sex. And, it's always good to reach out to a doctor or us at EOCIL or, someone who you really trust or your parents or anybody, who is important to you.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Isaac, so much for taking the time out of your day to have a quick little chat with me. Thank you to everyone listening in. This has been the EOCIL podcast. Have a great day.